Namaste. All the effects of karma or action are nullified in oneself, and one achieves liberation when ego attachment ceases, when one becomes centered in wisdom, and when all one's actions are offered up in sacrifice to the infinite. For such a person, both the act of self-offering and the offering itself are equally aspects of the one spirit. The fire of wisdom and the person making the offering are both spirit. In this realization, the yogi, freed from ego identification, goes straight to Brahman, or spirit. Well, this ties in with the Christ consciousness. In the West, they speak of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Here we speak of Om Tat Sat. When the Spirit, in order to create the universe, vibrated on the surface of his consciousness and created the waves of duality, there was the Spirit itself, which is completely without motion. There was the manifestation of that motion in action, Om, but you can't have a separateness because there can be only one reality. And so in the midst of those waves of duality, there's that single point of rest in the center. Left and right, but at this midpoint, there is stillness. And so reflected in every atom of movement of creation, reflected at the center of everything, there is that Sat, that consciousness of the Christ, Kutastha Chaitanya, which is motionless. Now, as human beings, Master said to me, I asked him one time, when can one be called a master? He is a master when he has reached Christ consciousness. That means when he has reached that point where he realizes that at the heart of all motion, there is still that reflection of no motion. Everything is one. Without that no motion, there wouldn't be completion. There has to be, in motion, the reflection of the motionless state of spirit. And so in action also, you must always feel, and Krishna is talking about this state in this passage here. The act of self-offering, the movement, and the offering itself, all of these equally are aspects of the one spirit. The knower, knowing, and known. And that known is the still spirit at the center of all things. When you find that, then you become freed from ego identification and go straight to Brahman. So in all action, you must be aware of the action, but you must also be aware of the stillness within that action. Therefore, it's very important, yes, to live for God, and yes, because you can't help it in the beginning, and you feel that it's you who are doing it, but you must gradually get rid of that feeling that it is you. And the more you can, while acting, feel completely at rest in yourself, the more you will find that you are not acting, though you are acting, and the more you will find inner freedom. This is the goal of all sadhana. He is the doer. When the yajna is the act of offering, and the offering itself and the thing offered, all is one. We have to realize that in God, everything is united. There is no separation. As long as you as a human being have any sense of separation, and that begins, of course, and ends with the ego. As long as there's that thought of personal involvement, you will be like those little little jets of flame coming up from a stove, under which there is that all-unifying gas. We must reach that point of realizing that you and I really are not different from each other. And therefore, in the social way of attaining this state, because there's an inner way and an outer way, and the outer way is the social way, feel that everything that other people do, feel it from your heart to them. Learn to love them as yourself. Not because they're separate from you, love them from yourself. This thought of hugging people, it's sort of like squeezing a toothpaste out of a tube. You think that you can get people's qualities by hugging them. You won't get them that way. You can only get it by withdrawing into yourself and from your center reaching out to that center. Therefore, I don't let people hug me. If they do hug me, I just don't cooperate. I just stand there. But I won't hug other people because I feel that that is not the way to reach their center. From my center to theirs, I feel much closer to people when I'm not physically demonstrating that love. Therefore, I think that the best possible greeting is the namaskar. My soul bows to your soul, not this heavy hand grip. I remember, just flashes into my mind as a memory. I was in an inn in Carmel in California, and the owner of this inn was a big bear of a man. And we were talking spiritual things as well as he was capable of doing it, because I was seeking a place for seclusion. And I told him I think I have maybe met 6 people in my life who I felt really knew God. Well, actually, I think it's many more than that as I rethink it. But this is what I said. Anyway, he put out this hairy paw. He said, "Shake, you just met the 7th." Well, you can tell by a person's actions whether he has that or not. Obviously, he didn't have it. It was very much of his ego that was putting his energy out. But you know, when you shake hands with people, it's an important gesture, because what you do is, in joining hands with them, you create 2 horseshoe magnets. And 2 horseshoe because the upper head to of one person to the head of the other, and the lower part of the body from one person to the other. And there is an exchange of magnetism. So I remember my guru told me to stand outside the church after Sunday service that he'd given to greet people. And I said to him, "Sir, I feel dizzy after greeting all these people." His answer was, "You're thinking too much of yourself. Think of God, you will feel His power flowing through you." And I did that, and I found it worked. And I felt better after shaking hands with people than otherwise. But it isn't a good practice to shake hands with everybody until you can be in that giving mode, which he told me and probably blessed me with. But otherwise, the law of exchange of magnetism is this, that a strong magnet will always affect a weaker magnet. Therefore, there are people in this world who are strongly negative. Stay away from them. Ramakrishna one time, who was certainly untouched by anything, yet to be a good example to others, there were 2 evil people who were coming, very materialistic people. He ran out of the room. He didn't want to meet them. And Ananda Ma, there's a teacher, a spiritual teacher in America, who works entirely from ego. Anyway, she came to Ananda Ma, and Ananda Ma had something else to do, and she left the room. As soon as his teacher left, Ananda Ma came back. But the masters do these things to give the example. Avoid evil. Don't think that you can influence evil. You don't know your strength. Don't test it, because it can pull you down spiritually. Avoid places that are evil or negative in their influence. And if you have to do that, then the best way to protect yourself is to harmonize the feelings in your heart. And once you feel harmony there, radiate harmony on all sides. In a giving mode, you're much less open to receive. In a receiving mode, you're much too open to receive. This is why my guru also said, don't go to restaurants, because when you're eating, you're in a receiving mode. And in those heterogeneous vibrations, you may be affected by the other customers there and so on. If you have to be in such a thing, then bring other people to you. Keep a spiritual bodyguard wherever you go. These things are important. 2 people are stronger than 1. Several people are stronger than just 2. And so if you have to be among people who are negative, then protect yourself by environment. I was really quite surprised. I lived through the World War II and the years before it. I was born in 1926. And I remember going through Germany and finding many very kind people there. And yet the Nazis were a very great force. And I was amazed to see how perfectly decent people could become suddenly very anti-Jewish and anti-this and anti-that, and think of themselves as the master race and so on. All a pure delusion. But there were so many people thinking it that it was very difficult for people to resist. When everybody around you is thinking in a certain way, it's not just something that doesn't have any influence because it's not a matter of just opinion. There's a power there. There's a power in delusion. There's a magnetism in evil. Avoid it. You never know how it will affect you. I remember we had an Austrian friends of ours who lived in Telehagen in Romania. And when the Nazis were becoming strong, they themselves, who were such nice people, were suddenly talking about, we Germans will come in and conquer the world. They didn't. That wasn't from their own nature. And this son of theirs, who was younger than I, but a very sweet little boy, my parents saw his diary, and he said, Hans der Führer, Hans the Führer, like Hitler. This disease can take hold of people, and it takes hold of them in whole nations and whole worlds. And it's not as if they themselves would think that way, but the power. My guru wrote that thoughts are universally, not individually rooted. And if you think in a certain way, then you will attract the thoughts on that level. I remember one time, many, many years ago, I was very young on the path, and I fell into an intense mood. And I tried my best to reason my way out of it. It didn't work. And I came to realize that reason always follows feeling. Therefore, reason wouldn't get me out of it. And I thought, well, do I like being unhappy? Do I like being in this black mood? And I said, no, I don't like it. Well, then my inner mental qualities, they're all citizens of one nation, which is me. They were saying, do you like it? I said, no. They said, well, what are we going to do about it? And I said, well, let's meditate. And so I sat down to meditate, and I put my mind very strongly here, lifting my level of energy to this point from where it was, which was going downward. It was all it took was 5 minutes. Suddenly I saw all the reasons why things needed to be the way they were. It would have been wrong for them to be anything else. Suddenly my whole state of mind, and with that state of mind, all my thoughts, supportively, took me in the right direction. This is very important for you individually. Don't be led by wrong feelings. Remember, they will have very great power over you. And they will seem so reasonable because reason will support any mood that you're in. But if you understand that this is basically and in principle wrong, then what can I do about it? Lift your level of consciousness. And in the matter of exchanging vibrations, don't mix with negative people. I know two disciples of my guru, brother disciples of mine. My guru said to them, you're bad for each other, don't mix together. And they didn't listen, and they did mix together, and they fed each other's negativity and finally left the spiritual path. Well, understand that this principle is, don't say, well, it's just in the mind, because that's exactly where it is. But that mind is also something over which you don't have complete control. Remember, you are influenced by Satan and by God. You're right in the middle. And if you move a little bit towards Satan, then he will give you all the more reason to think the way you're thinking. And he will justify for you in your own mind the way that you're thinking. And so you'll be fully self-justifying and all these qualities. Never trust your own judgment. I have found it extremely helpful when I find the temptation to justify myself, to say, no, I won't listen. Let God show me which is right. So don't mix with people. If you have to mix with them, don't look in their eyes, because through the eyes there's a great exchange of magnetism. If you're living with your guru or with a master, do look in the eyes. If you know that the people whom you're with are people who will uplift you, look in their eyes. Then you want to draw that magnetism. But in the case of people whose magnetism you yourself feel to avoid, don't. The art of our times is based on the simple magnetism of negativity. And when people think there's no meaning in anything, their art too will become that way. Everything they do will become that way. Listen to the songs that people sing. There was one song that was banned from the radio back before television days. It was called Gloomy Sunday. And so many people listening to that song committed suicide that finally it was banned from the airwaves as a dangerous thing. Music can have a great influence on you. Don't listen. I told you about this woman who tried to commit suicide. She failed, but she had a near-death experience where in the other world, she was in this hellish region, and she found that the vibrations of that were rock and roll music. There is evil in that music. There's an incentive to violence and negativity and low kinds of emotions. Please listen to me. I would like to hear when people go to places like restaurants and so on, instead of this restless music which just distracts the mind, it's a disturbance. I would like the restaurants and the hotels and public places to play good music. You know, there was one place where, a store where young people used to come and gather and smoke pot and do different drink and so on, and the man couldn't persuade them to leave. But then he got an inspiration, and he played Mozart over the loudspeaker. Within 2 weeks, the place was cleared. Those people didn't want to be around that kind of vibration. Seek that music which will uplift you, and you will find that that's a very important thing. Colors are also important. Have bright, pure colors, and you will find that then it will help to change you. So everything you do, remember, basically its basis is magnetism. Don't sit where people have sat who are negative. Don't eat with people who are negative. Try to be in places where people have always been positive. This will change your life. Follow these principles. Joy to you.